The dojo was almost empty when the woman's cry suddenly cut through the quiet hallway. It was not loud enough to bring everyone running, but it was frightened enough to make one old soldier stop in his tracks. He had been walking toward the exit with his gym bag over one shoulder when he heard a man's angry voice behind the closed storage room door. Then came a desperate plea for help. The old soldier froze. For years, he had trained himself to recognize the difference between an argument and genuine fear. This was fear. He put his bag down, turned around, and walked back toward the sound. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and standing up for someone when they are afraid to stand alone, please like this video, share it, leave a comment, and subscribe to Dad's Soul Diaries. Your support helps these emotional stories reach more people who believe that courage isn't always about fighting, it is sometimes about having the heart to step forward when everyone else walks away. The old soldier was named Silas Whitmore. He was 68 years old, walked with a slight stiffness in his left knee, and had spent most of his retirement trying to live a quiet life. He trained at the dojo 3 mornings a week, not because he wanted medals or attention, but because movement helped him keep his body strong and his mind peaceful. He had served his country for decades, including years in places where a person's ability to remain calm could mean the difference between life and death. But those days were behind him. Now he enjoyed simple things: morning coffee, gardening, repairing old radios, and helping his widowed neighbor carry groceries. He never introduced himself as a soldier. He never wore his old uniform. He never told strangers about the places he had been or the people he had lost. To most people at the dojo, he was simply an older man who trained quietly in the corner and left before the evening crowd became noisy. The woman whose cry he heard was Mara Ellison, a 32-year-old accountant who had joined the dojo only 3 months earlier. She was shy, hardworking, and determined to learn self-defense after a difficult period in her life had left her feeling powerless. She was not naturally athletic, but she practiced harder than almost anyone. Every class ended with her staying a few minutes longer to repeat the movements she had struggled with. Silas had noticed her effort. He had also noticed that one of the dojo's most advanced students, a black belt named Kellen Voss, had begun paying too much attention to her. Kellen was 29 and extremely talented. He had won several regional competitions and was often praised by the instructors. Unfortunately, he had begun confusing skill with entitlement. He liked being admired. He liked intimidating new students. And he especially disliked being ignored. Mara had ignored him for weeks. Whenever Kellen offered unwanted advice, she politely thanked him and returned to practice. When he stood too close, she moved away. When he made jokes at her expense, she pretended not to hear them. She didn't want trouble. She simply wanted to learn. But Kellen interpreted her silence as weakness. That evening, the dojo was busy during the final class. Students practiced combinations while the instructor walked between them, correcting their footwork and posture. Mara stayed late again. Silas was sitting near the entrance, slowly wrapping his hands after training, when he noticed Kellen waiting near the hallway. Something about the way he stood bothered him. He wasn't preparing to leave. He was waiting. Silas watched Mara finish putting her equipment away. She walked toward the back hallway. Kellen followed. Silas frowned. He told himself there could be an innocent explanation. Maybe they were discussing training. Maybe Kellen needed something. Maybe Silas was simply being overly cautious. Then he heard the raised voice. The dojo had become quiet enough that every sound carried. Kellen was angry. Mara was asking him to move. Silas stood. He walked toward the hallway. Then came the cry for help. Everything inside him changed. He didn't run blindly toward the door. He didn't shout. He didn't allow anger to control him. Years of experience had taught him that panic could make a dangerous situation worse. He first checked the hallway, saw that nobody else was nearby, and moved toward the storage room. The door was partially closed. Through the narrow opening, he could see Mara standing against the wall and Kellen blocking the exit. Kellen wasn't striking her, but his body position made it clear that she couldn't easily leave. His hand was against the door beside her, and his voice was low and threatening. Mara looked terrified. Silas opened the door. Kellen turned immediately. For a second, neither man spoke. Silas looked at Mara first. He calmly told her to step into the hallway. She moved quickly. Kellen tried to stop her. Silas stepped between them. He didn't touch Kellen. He didn't raise his voice. He simply stood there. Kellen looked at the old soldier and laughed. He told Silas that this had nothing to do with him. Silas told him that the moment someone asked for help, it became everyone's business. Kellen's expression hardened. He stepped closer. Silas remained still. There was something unsettling about his calmness. Kellen was used to people reacting to his aggression. They backed away. They argued. They shouted. Silas did none of those things. He simply watched. That made Kellen more frustrated. He challenged Silas to leave. Silas refused. He told Kellen that Mara had already made it clear she wanted him to move away from her. That should have ended everything. It didn't. Kellen shoved Silas in the chest. Mara gasped. Silas took one step backward but regained his balance. He looked at Kellen. Then he looked at Mara. He told her to go to the front office and call the instructor. Mara hesitated. Silas repeated the instruction. This time she ran. Kellen tried to follow. Silas blocked him. Kellen swung. Silas moved aside. The punch struck nothing. Kellen tried again. Silas caught his wrist and redirected the movement, forcing Kellen off balance without striking him. Kellen stumbled into the wall. He stared at the old man in disbelief. Silas released him immediately. He told him that he didn't want to hurt him. Kellen attacked again. This time Silas used a controlled defensive movement that brought Kellen safely to the floor. The old soldier immediately stepped back, leaving him room to stand. There was no celebration. No smile. No insult. Silas simply waited. Kellen stood slowly. For the first time, he looked uncertain. The instructor, Orson Hale, arrived with Mara and another staff member. They had already called security. Kellen tried to explain himself. He claimed it had been a misunderstanding. Mara shook her head. She finally told the truth. She explained that Kellen had been following her after class for weeks. He had repeatedly pressured her to train with him alone. When she refused, he became angry. That evening, he had followed her into the storage area and blocked her from leaving. Silas listened quietly. He didn't interrupt. The instructor looked devastated. He had trusted Kellen because of his skill and reputation. Now he realized he had ignored warning signs. Mara began crying. Not because Kellen was still there. Because she was finally safe enough to let herself feel what had happened. Silas didn't tell her to stop crying. He didn't tell her she should have fought harder. He simply stood nearby and gave her space. That was something Mara remembered for the rest of her life. Nobody told her that fear was weakness. Nobody blamed her. Someone had simply believed her. Later that night, after security had escorted Kellen away and the dojo had emptied, Mara sat on a bench near the entrance. Silas sat several feet away. She thanked him. He told her that she didn't owe him anything. She said that she had been afraid nobody would believe her. Silas looked toward the empty training floor. He told her that fear often convinces people to stay silent because they imagine nobody will care. But he said that silence should never be mistaken for consent. Mara wiped her eyes. She asked how he had known something was wrong. Silas thought for a moment. He explained that after decades of military service, he had learned to notice small details. A person's voice. Their breathing. Their posture. The distance between people. Most importantly, he had learned to listen when someone sounded afraid. Mara asked whether he had ever been afraid. Silas smiled sadly. He told her that anyone who claimed they had never been afraid was probably lying. Fear wasn't shameful. What mattered was what a person chose to do while afraid. Those words stayed with Mara. The next morning, the dojo's owner held a meeting. Kellen was suspended pending an investigation and eventually removed from the program after multiple students came forward with similar concerns. The instructors changed their safety policies. They created clearer reporting procedures and made sure students knew that unwanted behavior would be taken seriously. But something else changed too. Mara returned. At first, she wasn't sure she could. Walking through the dojo doors made her heart race. Every corner reminded her of that night. Silas never pressured her to come back. Instead, he told her that the choice belonged entirely to her. If she wanted to leave martial arts forever, that was okay. If she wanted to continue, she should do it because the dojo belonged to her too. Mara eventually returned. She began slowly. One class. Then another. Then another. She still felt nervous sometimes. But she kept going. Silas became a quiet source of encouragement. He never treated her like someone fragile. He treated her like someone capable of becoming stronger. Months passed. Mara's confidence grew. She began helping new students. She learned how to recognize dangerous situations. She learned that self-defense wasn't about becoming aggressive. It was about awareness, boundaries, confidence, and knowing when to seek help. One afternoon, she completed her first skills assessment. The instructor told her she had made remarkable progress. Mara smiled. Then she looked toward Silas. He simply nodded. Years earlier, Silas had believed his most important work was behind him. He had spent his younger years protecting people in places where danger was obvious. But now he understood something. Sometimes courage wasn't needed on a battlefield. Sometimes it was needed in a hallway. Sometimes protecting someone meant standing between them and danger. Sometimes it meant making a phone call. Sometimes it meant believing someone when they finally found the courage to speak. And sometimes it meant simply staying nearby until the person no longer felt alone. One evening, Mara asked Silas why he had stepped in when he could have walked away. He looked at the sunset outside the dojo windows. He told her that years ago, another soldier had once stepped forward for him when he was in trouble. That man had taught Silas something he never forgot. You don't wait until someone is completely helpless before deciding they deserve help. You help when you see the first sign that something is wrong. Mara asked whether he remembered the man's name. Silas smiled. He said his name was Everett Shaw. Everett had died many years earlier. But his lesson had survived. Silas explained that people sometimes imagined heroes as extraordinary individuals who appeared during dramatic moments. But most heroes were ordinary people who simply refused to look away. Mara became quiet. Then she thanked him again. Silas told her to save her thanks. He said that someday, someone else might need her courage. And when that moment came, he hoped she would remember what happened in that hallway. Not the fear. Not Kellen. Not the humiliation. But the moment she cried for help and someone listened. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, share it with someone who believes in courage and kindness, and subscribe to Dad's Soul Diaries. Sometimes one person stepping forward can change another person's entire life. And before the ending, I have one special request for you. Comment, "I will not look away," if you believe that when someone asks for help, we should listen, care, and do what we safely can to protect them.